Stories have been around as a form of entertainment almost as long as mankind itself. These can be tragic, grand, comedic. Hold up, is that a Gintama opening? Let's go! Oh my god, it's so hard! And countless other attributes that would take up the entire video were I to mention each individually. As the centuries have passed, the medium through which stories are told have changed drastically. From cave paintings to plays and dances, and then to books and games and mangas. Mangas are arguably one of the newest mediums of storytelling, and along with Western comic books, are a unique take on how to tell a story. Hand-drawn pictures accompanied with text which is mostly dialogue. There's a certain manga that started all the way back in the age of the dinosaurs, which means the 1980s, and yet is somehow still fresh and can be reread many times without anything being taken away from it. Rather, you gain new insights every time you pick up a volume again. This manga has inspired thousands, maybe even billions.
Billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and
of stories, writers, and games, and is also the inspiration for this shitty video. That manga is Fairy Tail. No, I'm joking. That manga is Berserk. There are thousands, maybe even millions of Berserk theories out there and have been the butt of many discussions ranging from the home of the salt, Reddit, to the home of the weeb shit where people hug their body pillows and stuff like that, mine on my list. One of the most debated over topics in all of manga fandom is whether or not the main antagonist of the Berserk manga, Griffith, did anything wrong. I've spent thousands of hours, maybe even years, scouring over discussions, and I've gone and read and reread the Eclipse arc again and again and again, and every time I read it, the more I begin to understand where people on both sides of the argument are coming from. I list the reasons why people think that Griffith is a low-life piece of shit who should be castrated by Horsov. There's a strong probability that actually happened in the castle basement. The first argument, presented by those who are anti-Griffith, is that Griffith sacrificed the majority of the Band of the Hawk, with the exception of Guts, Casca, and Rickard. He was selfish, and just because he wanted to fulfill his own dreams, he threw away their lives, and that truly is an utterly despicable act. The second argument is that he raped Casca. I don't think I even need to go into depth about this one, because that was Griffith or rather, Femto being petty. That was simply revenge for Guts abandoning him. Finally, the third is that even though he founded a safe haven for people everywhere against monsters in the form of Falconia, can we just agree that Falconia is a pretty shitty name for a city? Like, come on, Kentar, you're better than this. You have a pretty good imagination. You could have come up with something better than Falconia. Come on, man. Many thousands were killed, even when they didn't have to be. And he unveiled the monsters to the world just to justify his own kingdom, and it worked. He fooled everyone. Let's go back to the first point, where Griffith sacrifices the Band of the Hawk. Throughout the pre-eclipse Berserk, we are constantly handed hints and clues by Mira that Griffith doesn't exactly stand on the most solid of moral grounds. Throughout the first 70 chapters or so, he constantly uses Guts to carry out the dirty work, like killing the young prince and the advisor, while he sits back and enjoys the scenery. In his conversation with the princess, he also tells her that he doesn't view anyone who doesn't have a dream of their own as an equal. He views them as someone beneath him, like a slave almost. He treats the Men of the Hawk as mere pawns, whereas they view him as a friend and a charismatic leader and someone they can rely on and trust and place their life in his hands. So when he finally does throw them away, it is established that he is selfish and likely never really cared or truly loved the Band of the Hawk. Second point, where he rapes Casca just to spite Guts, is simply petty revenge. To the very end, we see Guts refusing to believe that his dearest friend could do something so horrible, and alas, Griffith destroys our hopes and expectations along with Guts' own and the lives of the Band of the Hawk. It is quite unlikely that Griffith was unaware of Casca's feelings for him, because Griffith is a very intelligent commander and he would have definitely picked up the signs that Casca loved him. However, that act just shows that he hated Guts more than he cared about her, and through this we know that Griffith is petty and will exploit his power as Femto to fulfill his own needs and wants, and even as a god he is not above human emotion. Regardless of how unimportant they are in the long run of things, because where we are in the manga, Casca's rape has only affected Guts and his friends and no one else. The whole reason Guts set out to the Pixie Island was to fix Casca's broken mind. To the rest of the world, Casca might as well not exist. Finally, When Griffith is reborn as a man, evil creatures begin to arise in the world and he becomes invincible. And after beating Ganshka, monsters and evil creatures spread throughout the world. The fishing island upon which Guts and the crew stayed being only one example of many throughout the world of Berserk. We can assume that many thousands, maybe even millions of people were killed because of Griffith's actions, and it's very unlikely that Griffith was unaware of what the consequences of his actions were going to be, because he was made privy to the knowledge of the gods and all of the secrets of the world when he was made into Femto. However, the pro-Griffith side has several compelling arguments as well. They argue that Griffith's contemplation on choosing whether or not he should accept the position of Femto was a very well thought out one. Because from the very beginning, we are told that Griffith has told all the members of the Band of the Hawk that he will do anything to create his kingdom. And it's up to them if they joined him or not, he's gonna do it anyways. And therefore, all the members of the Band of the Hawk voluntarily joined the Band of the Hawk because they were attracted to his natural charisma. Secondly, Griffith's body and spirit were utterly destroyed after Guts left, and he was tortured in the basement of the castle. And when he was finally rescued, he was nothing more than a mere shadow of the grand white knight he once was, and hence he is full of anger and regret. And is not thinking straight. What many do not consider is that he has spent 2 years away from the Hawk, which is enough time to grow apart from the members and perhaps even view them in a negative light. You have to remember that he is human at the end of the day. Third, Griffith was always very analytical, and he was definitely observing the events of the eclipse carry out, and watched many of his comrades get devoured by the monsters that the god had unleashed. What many people use as an argument to justify his actions, but what I think is absolute bullshit, is that by the time that Griffith was given the choice of becoming Femto, most of the Band of the Hawk was already dead, and that Griffith didn't want to let their sacrifices go to vain. He wanted to carry on his dream, which the entire band had worked toward and died for, to make it a reality. Fourth is that he is seeking redemption for his acts by creating Falconia and protecting its inhabitants from all danger and caring for their every need and want. Griffith has the power to become a cruel tyrant and only do the bare minimum to maintain his kingdom. But for some reason he doesn't. Instead, he created a safe haven for all those seeking protection. He even sends out parties of soldiers to look for refugees seeking shelter and seeking to return to their normal everyday lives. Finally, we have to see whether or not Guts is objectively better, more morally standing than his mortal enemy. Guts has a particularly twisted childhood. He never had any parents, was betrayed by his adoptive father Gambino, and then sold out by him as a prostitute for 3 gold coins. Guts has been raised on the battlefield and is therefore a tier above other soldiers and footmen. Guts isn't good or evil because war always has 2 sides, and the side that is victorious proclaims that it is better morally than the other. The first argument that puts Guts morally above Griffith is that Guts has a significantly lesser number of lives taken compared to Griffith, and all of those were by his own sword, and were necessary for his own survival, whereas that was not the case with Griffith. However, many friends, husbands, fathers Guts has killed. How many groups similar to the Band of the Hawk has Guts destroyed? Sure, the headcount might be lower, but it's there nonetheless. Why do we feel that the Band of the Hawk is special just because it's the main cast? Because just to many soldiers out there, Guts is the equivalent to what Griffith is to Guts, an undefeatable enemy who cut down their heads and destroyed their hopes and dreams. Secondly, Guts was aware of how twisted and cruel Griffith was ever since he was ordered to kill the advisor by Griffith. Guts should have known that Griffith was not above using twisted methods to accomplish his goals. When he eavesdropped on Griffith's conversation with the princess, Guts also finds out that he views the Band of the Hawk as unequals and pawns, and yet Guts still supported him. So in a way, Guts actually supported Griffith's actions and led to his own downfall. This is just one of the beauties of Berserk. No character stands on morally sound ground, and the line between good and evil is always blurred, and you have to pick a side based on your own personal ideologies and philosophies. And based on my own, I don't think anyone can say that Griffith did nothing wrong. Can his actions be justified? Perhaps, but he definitely did a lot of